Today's episode is sponsored by Caddy, reducing procurement costs for manufacturers by reducing pricing inconsistencies and consolidating suppliers for optimal sourcing. Visit them at drawer.caddy.com.
Aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Machines and automation.
Additive manufacturing.
Smart manufacturing.
Global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. I'm joined today by Chris Brown and Jacob Sanchez. Chris is Vice President of Sales for Caddy. Founded 6 years ago, Caddy specializes in digital solutions, including the AI-based Caddy Drawer utilization system. Jacob, who heads industry solutions and community development for IGUS, is a longtime industry advocate for enhancing the skilled trades industry, including his popular How-To Metalworking series on YouTube. Welcome to the show. So I met both of you at IMTS, and Chris, I think we also spoke at the Smart Manufacturing Experience show in Pittsburgh earlier this year. It's good to connect again.
It's great to connect again. Great to see you again, Steve. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm hyped, fellas. I just talked to somebody the other day and said that even though IMTS was only 2 weeks ago, it feels like it was yesterday and a year ago at the same time.
Time flies, but yeah, and I know, Jacob, you're just sharing about your post IMTS experience too.
Yeah, the following Monday, went straight into a meeting, giving a tour and putting on an event for 15 businesses out of Japan that flew in, came to our center in Detroit called the Engineering Center. And then that same day, I had to drive 4 hours to Ohio, have a big Ohio meeting on Tuesday. It was nuts.
Yeah. So we're talking today about the ongoing workforce shortage and skills gap and what can be done to help alleviate that. We've all heard the dire numbers. Currently about 600,000 unfilled jobs across the manufacturing sector in the U.S. And a recent Deloitte study predicted as many as 3.8 million new employees being added by 2033, with the potential for half of those going unfilled. That's not just on the job floor, but at all levels of manufacturing. Many of the most experienced people are retiring and taking their knowledge with them. But before we totally dive into this, Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about Caddy?
Absolutely. So Caddy is a transformative tool to an organization whereby which we're applying AI technology to their drawings, linking a lot of data that is traditionally siloed around their organization, whether that be in ERP systems, quality systems, MES systems, linking that data back to the drawing, democratizing all of that data across their entire organization by making it incredibly easy to search for. An example of this would be if you are on a procurement team, for example, you can utilize a brand new drawing that your engineering team just handed to you, and utilizing our AI shape similarity search, find all of the drawings that have a similar shape to them. And by linking the data from the multiple systems around the organization, you can instantly uncover who made the part, how much did they make these similar parts for, have we ever had any quality problems with similar parts in the past, who performs best at making similar parts, so that you can make very, very fast and educated decisions around who's going to at least participate in that bid on those new parts for you.
Thanks. And Jacob, tell us a little bit more about your experience and how you hooked up with Chris and Caddy. I know you shared a stage at IMTS.
That's actually a super funny way that I love that it happened. So I speak and host a lot of trade shows for automation and manufacturing across the nation. I've hosted shows for 80,000 people with my own TV crew the entire week. I've been a keynote speaker at some shows. One of the shows, it was called Advanced Manufacturing Expo, AME, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was a speaker of last year. And then this year, I was invited back as a special guest. So I was on the website and I was on the special guest, look who's coming to the show with a big bio and stuff. And one of Chris's colleagues, Lindsay, thought that she was looking at the speakers for that year. She's like, oh, I'm going to reach out to some of these people, see who can talk with Chris. And she was looking at last year's speaker submissions or last year's speaker's website, but then she saw a photo or a post of me going this year, so she thought I was speaking. And so she reached out to me and we went along, and then like a few weeks in, we realized, wait, like, you're not speaking at this show? I'm like, no, I spoke last year. She's like, oh, well, that's the reason I reached out. And it just so happened that we kept working out and we had an awesome time on stage. And then here we are again.
The power of networking, or just being in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about, some of the numbers, and Chris, you ran through a bunch of acronyms, ERP, and what does all that data translate to when you combine it with the skills gap and the departure from the workforce?
Absolutely. So I want to start with just a really, really quick stat. Caddy recently conducted a survey of hundreds of manufacturing leaders across the entire country. And 73% of senior executives answered that they expect to retire within the next 10 years. Out of that, 68% believe that half or greater than half of all of the company's knowledge is going to walk out the door with them. And this obviously raises a lot of red flags. And a lot of those red flags are because that data is not structured in a way that makes it easy to hand off to the next generation. And what I'm talking about when I talk about linking data to drawings and making things searchable, it is taking that unstructured institutional knowledge that exists in pocketed silos around a company and delivering it straight to the mechanism that manufacturers use to communicate every single day, the drawing of the part that they're going to be manufacturing. So when you ask that question, it really points directly back to that stat and how it's going to facilitate the knowledge transfer as new employees enter into the organization. The young generation of today, the new employees of today, are not very used to doing the shoulder tap, right? They're not used to being able to turn around and tap on the shoulder of the person next to them. This is a generation that's been on Zoom calls their entire education. They've been taking classes online. They've been Googling since they could hold, a tablet in their hands. They're used to being able to find answers on their own through the use of technology. And what we really mean by that is delivering the data to where people are used through the means of which people are used to getting their data today and facilitating it that way. Does that help, Steve?
It does, yeah. Jacob, anything to add on that?
Shoulder tapping is my new favorite phrase because of Chris, and I literally use it. Like I said, I used it the other day at work to explain something. I love that phrase. And something you just mentioned too, you just mentioned since they've been able to hold a tablet, they're used to finding things by themselves. This new generation is, in a sense, like very independent. They are very go get 'em type of attitude. But if there's nothing to go get, that's where you start getting those theories and opinions of, oh, this new generation's lazy. They don't like doing anything. That's only in the case of, when there's nothing to do, of course we're not going to do anything. You know what I mean? I'm not going to work my butt off to just go do nothing. But because that they're so used to searching for things and doing things on their own, when you can provide either self-guided learning courses or provide them with an attainable goal of X, without you having to micromanage. It's really powerful having this younger generation come into your workforce and being able to quote unquote lead at such a young age.
Yeah, well, it was an amazing stat that you quoted there at the beginning, Chris. About 75% of current leaders are expecting to retire in 10 years. So obviously somebody's going to step in to fill the void. So what strategies can manufacturers do to help effectively prepare the next generation?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that we can be doing. I think the first thing that really needs to be done, that's not talking about technology, is comfortable mentorship programs need to be established. Again, I go back to the last conversation that we just had, where the new generation is not necessarily familiar with having somebody sitting next to them where they can tap on the shoulder in order to get the information that they require, and helping them understand that that's a normal motion in business is very imperative, right? Helping them become comfortable with the fact that, yes, you are interrupting their day. However, if the question is valid and it is a means to more production within an organization, then interrupting the day is a completely valid thing to be doing, and that we want you to be doing that, right? I think as leaders, we don't want anyone suffering in silence. And the new generation tends to do that because of an uncomfortability around interrupting a senior leader's day, right? We just need to help them become more comfortable with that. But beyond that, we need to start digitizing all of this data and all of these assets that we've created. We need to become comfortable with the idea that AI is going to be helping our days and us make faster business decisions. One of our core beliefs here at Caddy is that AI should not be making decisions for you. AI should be doing the research for you and presenting the research to you in a way that's easy to digest. And this is the gap right now in the comfortability with AI. There is this notion in the media, there's this notion on tech sites that AI is going to replace jobs, and it is not. It is going to replace the arduous, mundane, boring parts of our jobs so that we can focus strictly on the things that are the absolute highest value, highest priority work that AI should not be doing. Getting comfortable with that notion and putting those technologies into place would absolutely be the best thing that manufacturing leaders can be doing today in order to ensure that the next 30, 40, 50 years of manufacturing are on a growth trajectory.
And where are we in that curve in terms of people and companies becoming more accepting of AI and these types of tools? And have you seen much of a change in the last few years? I mean, it's certainly getting a lot of press. Every day I get bombarded by AI pitches.
Absolutely. So some interesting stats around that, split up by the operations within an organization. 68% of procurement believe that they could do a better job negotiating and securing discounts if they had better access to data through AI tools. 60% of engineers have stated that AI would help them search through drawings and pull out critical information in order to help with designed decisions. And 58% of salespeople today are stating that AI could automatically extract costing and pricing details from past work, speeding up their quoting process. What's really unfortunate about that, though, is that only 36% of leadership teams believe that they're keeping pace with technology changes right now today. And that 36% are actually at a point where it's keeping them awake at night because of how slow they're moving towards that digital transformation.
Jacob, has that been your experience out in the field where you see that people aren't embracing it to the extent that they should be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to get people to understand that automation isn't as scary as it used to be. So yes, when it comes to the fact of AI not being utilized in the workplace, whether it's in line with the manufacturing process, whether it has to do with documentation and organization, or it just has to do with smart searching. It's still not a widely used tool, but I have seen, and I just had a call with one of my colleagues a week and a half ago when I was coming back from Ohio. He said, "Hey, do you mind if my buddy calls you? He runs a machine shop. He's getting into a new, like, 50,000 square foot building, new machines. He uses AI right now to help him, and he wants to know if there's any more tricks he should be doing." I was like, "Okay, yeah." I was like, "I'm not the AI expert, but I know machining. So give him my phone number and I'll talk to him." And he was telling me that, and this is somebody that obviously is already engaged with emerging tech in general, somebody that's expanding their business, somebody that's trying to find the latest out in CNC machining technologies, work holding, things like that. Obviously, that type of person is going to engage with new digital technologies. And he was asking, what can I do more with AI just to help in my day to day? And back to Chris's point of using it not to figure out how do I make this thing do my job, but how can I make this thing get information for me so I can make a decision for my job? That's what I was telling him about. It's really crucial to utilize. I use ChatGPT every single day and use it to find information that I would otherwise have to go on, I don't know, like 12 or 8 different websites. Use it to find that stuff and then make your decision. And so we had a long talk about that, and then it dived into our manufacturers on the CNC machining side, jumping into you being able to upload a CAD model, so a designed part, and then a CAM system, which is what tells the CNC how to cut. Look at that CAD and spit out G-code, spit out your program for you. That's the next step that he's looking for in Mastercam and Fusion 360 and stuff. So it's really interesting.
I think, Jacob, we talked on stage at IMTS a lot about the fact that people aren't, if we were born to be librarians, we'd be librarians. And we're using AI to supplement our librarian tasks of the day, right? To your point about doing research and finding that data a lot faster.
So I became aware of ChatGPT maybe a year and a half ago or so, and played around with it, obviously from a different perspective than the two of you, more of a non-technical aspect, but there's been a lot of advances that I've seen. How quickly is it that type of technology progressing? And conversely, are there still risks of relying too much on it without verifying and checking?
I think if you try to revolve your job around it, it will definitely bite you pretty hard. Even if it starts working in the short term, it is going to bite you in the long term if you try to revolve your entire job and doing your tasks based on whatever it can spit out for you. Like you can spend all this time figuring out the right ways to ask a question, to categorize things, to use keywords. But if you start depending on it for your job, you are going to get harmed in the long run. It has advanced exceptionally the past, I don't know, like few years now, because I've been around when it was still the first rev. I don't know what 4 point whatever they're on now. But even since then, it's expanded the way that it can search for information, the way that you can talk to it. But again, if you're trying to start a business or you're trying to do a side hustle and you're basing it on what it gives you, you're going to have trouble, at least in my opinion.
At the end of the day, my job is reliant on the decisions that I make, whether I make those decisions or I outsource those decisions. I am going to continue to hold on to the actual key to the decision. However, I'm going to continue to use these tools in order to get me data that otherwise would take me 3 or 4 days to research. It'll help me get data in 10 seconds.
That's a great savings.
Huge savings, absolutely.
So jumping back to the whole idea of mentorship and the importance of that, and Jacob, Chris, you mentioned disrupting the day. Jacob, you don't strike me as the type of person that's afraid to be a disruptor.
So I laughed. What did you say? The suffering and silence thing?
Yeah.
So I do that, but I do it in like my personal life. So I've been very lucky, and I know a lot of my like friends and younger colleagues suffer from the suffering and silence at work. I was lucky that when I got started, I had to immediately learn how to speak to the CEO of Fanuc, like because of the job that I had with the company I was with, and we were tackling these big partnerships with companies. The CEO of Heimer, who's a good friend of mine now, I had to learn from a young age of 19 how to talk to these C-suite level executives and pitch a business. So I had to get over that much faster than the standard young professional. But when it comes to personal life, I guarantee you throughout my day, I look for ways to just avoid a situation. I'm the type of guy where if there's a crowd, like you're going into a restaurant or something, and there's a crowd right here, and there's a crowd in front of you, and the entrance is behind the crowd, I will walk around the crowd on the outside, even if it takes me an extra 2 or 4 minutes to get inside, just to avoid saying, excuse me, pardon me. Like I will suffer the extra 5-minute walk to the front of the building just to avoid the crowd of people.
Yeah, everybody has their own comfort zones, and it's different from situation to situation, I guess.
But it happens in the workplace too. That I think Chris is totally spot on with that.
Yeah. So what are the biggest challenge in creating that culture of coaching and mentorship within a manufacturing organization?
One of the things that we have to do, and I was grateful enough to experience, we have to remember the days before all of these tools, right? I don't know how much I like admitting to this, but I entered the workforce before the first iPhone was released, right? I entered the workforce as email was, just becoming the most prevalent tool to communicate. I entered the workforce before any of these chat tools were ever invented. If I wanted to know the answer to a question, I had to get up from my chair. I had to go tap on somebody's shoulder. If that person wasn't there, I had to pray that I somehow knew what their phone number was, right? Because we didn't have company directories in those days. We couldn't just pull up Slack and click on their contact information to find their phone number, right? And we as leaders need to remember what those days were like, and we need to create an environment that is safe as it was back then for people to ask you questions. We need to do a much better job of focusing on the emotional side of this new generation entering into the workforce and make it comfortable for them to approach us. That's our job to gain, approachableness, right? It is not their job to overcome the fact that the leaders of an organization every once in a while might have a little bit of a temper, so they're unapproachable. They always look busy. Their calendar is full, so they're unapproachable. Doing things like putting office hours on your calendar, blocking off time periods where you're going to leave your door open or you're going to walk around the manufacturing shop floor, introducing people, asking them how their day is, asking them how their work is. That's our responsibility as the leaders within organizations in order to really build that culture where it's safe. The next thing that we need to do is build a framework for how mentorship should work and what it should look like. Over the course of the last 10, 15 years, I believe we've lost that framework in a lot of organizations by having our calendars so full and our days being so busy and our nights being so long. And bringing back some of those old guides on how to set up a framework for mentorship can be really, really, really powerful. Jacob, do you agree? Do you have any of those frameworks in place in your business today?
I agree with those. Something that I was going to add, at least something that I've personally experienced when I was starting out, is promoting this level of autonomy. And I guess this may go with your point of creating that safe space at work where they are allowed to go and ask these questions and do these things. creating a certain level of autonomy within your organization where they know that I can do ABC task without having to mention anything to my manager. But I know once I get to the D task, I need to go maybe touch base, or maybe I need to have a touch point. And that also goes with this idea of just smart delegation, but giving autonomy to your workers and your workplace where it's okay for you to do these things and me have no idea you're doing them. Like, that's okay. And I think that's something that's going to go along with all this idea of using AI, having readily available tools, having data that's accessible and relevant. You know what I mean? So not is all the data just here, but it's also easy to get it and it's easy to find what you need. For all of this to work, you need a certain level of autonomy in your workers to just go do the things. That's helped me a ton in my career, especially when it comes to how I was mentored. I was mentored with a lot of autonomy. And with it comes a lot of mistakes, but still, I feel like that's just been the best way for me to learn that may help others as well.
You hit on a really good point there, Jacob, and something else that I think that we as leaders have lost visibility on in the last 15 years, and that is we learn our best through failure, right? We learn the fastest through failure. 15, 20 years ago, that failure was contained to you and your boss. Today, that failure can be very public in Slack channels, in emails that have 50 people on them. It can be the young generation can be very afraid to fail because of how public that failure is. And we need, as leaders, we need to help create a very safe environment where it's not public in regards to who failed. The only thing that becomes public is the lesson that was learned through the failure. And it's that type of an environment that we need to continue to build for the young generation and train the workforce today.
So to expand on a couple of points that you both just made, and also the story that you shared initially about how you first met and through the networking, and it wasn't necessarily mentorship, but it was kind of face-to-face communication and sharing of information. How do you combine that with the new technological tools to really reach? And you talked a little bit about that with some of the AI tools, but how do you optimize that to retain the institutional knowledge?
There's a lot of tools entering the workforce today that we're using, that record those conversations that happen, whether that be a meeting that happens on Zoom or shameless plug, a Plod device, right, that you wear on your neck or you insert into your pocket that records the conversations that you're having. Even things like Otter AI is an application that you can run on your phone and set on the table while you're having these conversations that take a transcript and a meeting summary and automatically take all of your to-dos and your lessons learned and digitize them to be searched through again. And I think we need to become more comfortable with those tools. Even I need to become more comfortable with those tools. I get a little uncomfortable from time to time when when all of a sudden this Zoom meeting is now being recorded, right? You become a little bit uncomfortable with that. We need to get a lot more comfortable with that because it's the only way to retain the face-to-face, body language-based conversation back and forth while at the same time digitizing those conversations to be used for prosperity. We need to become a lot more comfortable with these tools that utilize AI to search through, whether it be drawings or ERP data or conversations that have happened. Really, any of these AI tools that are out there that are helping us do this, we just need to become a lot more comfortable with.
On the point of failures and comfort level on that nobody likes to fail or being pointed out, but it definitely can be helpful. Any personal experiences that you can share on that, either from yourself or from a company's standpoint where that has worked out?
Yeah, I mean, I am not going to dive down all of the rabbit holes of failures that I have created in my career, right? I have cost companies that I've worked for significant amounts of money, whether that be onboarding the wrong tool or signing the wrong contract or not reading the proper clauses in a contract or accepting a contract to manufacture a part that was absolutely not manufacturable at all. I'm not going to dive down any of those rabbit holes. I think it's said I'm going to share a mantra of mine that my team hears from me pretty much every day. And that is, if I'm not failing, I'm not learning, right? Please go out there and fail a little bit so that we all can learn, we all can grow and become better at our jobs. If life was as easy as making a decision and it always being the right decision to make us a lot of money and grow our businesses, this wouldn't be nearly as much fun for me as this is. And so that's my mantra on it. And I'll hand it over to Jacob to share some details, maybe.
I love this topic of failure because one of my friends, and I've been on her podcast twice. Her name of her podcast is called Failing for You. And so we talk about all kinds of stuff like this. But one of my biggest just failures in business, while a lot of them, especially when I was a CNC machinist, were numerous, the biggest one that has led to where I am now, when I was looking for my next new role after I was done being a machinist and I was an application engineer, and I was like, where do I go after this? I was like, oh, I want to work. And this was like three years ago, I think. I want to work for these big companies. Like, I love Fanuc and Kawasaki and Iskawa and Mastercam and blah, blah, blah. I have all this knowledge. And I did. I had, I don't know, 5-6 years of industry experience under my belt. And I was applying to roles and jobs. And I made a spreadsheet that would have the role, the location in America, the job title, and some other things. And I would put, did you apply, yes or no? And have they got back to you, yes or no? And I would update it when people got back to me. And after, whether it was an in-person interview, whether it was just an email rejection or whatever it was, after 9 months or something, I had 32 or 27 different no's. I had this big spreadsheet that was just red because I would highlight it in red if it was a no. And just staring that down, I remember thinking, this is hilarious. I know I have a skill set, and yes, I'm staring down this 27 page or 27 list no sheet. And then here I am now with IGUS, $1.2 billion company with 31 headquarters around the globe and helping head these crazy divisions and starting a community for collaborative engineering. And it's if at any point I would have stopped because of all that failure, I definitely would not have got here.
Perseverance goes a long way, but so do finding the right tools to overcome failures. Along those lines, what do cognitive analytics or how do cognitive analytics enhance decision-making processes for leaders?
At the end of the day, we do not, I don't care who you are as a human, how smart you are, how fast you can read, how fast you can process data, right? There is too much data being created every minute of every day, of every month, of every year currently for us to even think for 1 second we can know everything there is to know about a specific topic that we are researching. Technology, specifically AI technology, is the only tool that's out there right now that can understand all of this data, format and reformat it in a short, sweet, and concise way for us to be able to absorb it. Whether that be, all of the research papers that have been in the world that have been created on the right feed speeds and spindle speeds for different materials and all of the data that's resulted from that, from sensors of chatter to load pressure sensors and all of this type of stuff. We cannot process that data fast enough. That might be an organization that's created 8.5 million parts over the lifetime of the organization. There's no way for everyone to remember every part, every cost, every failure, every quality defect, and how those quality defects were overcome. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what your role is or how smart you are. We have to start relying on cognitive analytics and AI technology in order to present that data back to us in a clear and concise way so that we can make decisions to move forward while minimizing failures, while minimizing defects, while minimizing the amount of effort that we put into advancing and growing our organizations.
So we haven't gotten to the point yet where we can upload all this data while you're sleeping and wake up the next morning and being smarter than the day before. But how do you make sense of all this data, and how important is it to be self-guided in terms of processing this?
It has to be self-guided, right? At the end of the day, if we're not the ones controlling the data that's going in there, then mystery data starts appearing. The data sets themselves have to be truth, right? In order for us to be reliant on the data that's being served back to us. If non-truth gets into the data set itself, it's very hard for these tools to disseminate between fake data and real data. And at the end of the day, if we're not the ones that are controlling the data sets that these models are learning from, we're doing ourselves an injustice today, but an injustice way down the line when somebody relies on that data that was inaccurate from the onset.
You mentioned earlier that you came up to speed pretty quickly in the industry. So along with what Chris was talking about, just how did that happen, and what other tools would have made the process even better for you?
I mean, the cool thing about that, I think the reason that I got on boarded so quickly just into this industry was because the tools that I was using were online, but we were developing them as I was learning with them. So basically, I was a part of starting the Titans of CNC Academy, which what is now people can go on that website with zero manufacturing knowledge, and through videos, through documentation and resources that are all curated and set there for them, they can go watch videos, download the right programming softwares that we show you how to download them, blah, blah, blah. And you can start learning how to become a CNC machinist, from CADing to camming, programming to machining. So that's what I was starting out learning with, and also helping them develop at the same time. So my learning experience for the CNC machining realm was very much using and figuring out how to create these online videos to teach me when nobody else was there. And that's all about self-guided learning. And self-guided learning can only happen when you have the right information in there. We were helping them figure out what information they didn't have. And this was before AI tools. So imagine if we would have had AI tools that could help us with this one, Chris. We would go through the drawings and have to try to draw the part, right? We got to a point where we were like, hey, I can't draw this. And we told their engineer, and he was like, oh, yeah, you're right. You can't draw this because I didn't give you these two features, or I didn't give you the numbers for these two features for you to input into your CAD while you were drawing it, so you can't model it. Let me go fix that. And there was tons of stuff like that. So imagine how much more productive the learning experience would have been if we had some type of AI tools to also help guide us as we're learning to guide others to learn. It turned out amazing. Obviously, the Academy's doing phenomenal now, but thinking about that for other small to medium-sized businesses when they're trying to develop their own learning structure for their people, for their business, how can they better use tools to help them help others learn? So that was my experience with that. It's very interesting.
So, learning obviously is an ongoing experience for all of us, no matter how long you've been in the industry. But you both are in kind of a position now to be mentors yourself, and either directly or influence others to be mentors. what advice would you give to organizations or other people, other leaders, on how to improve the mentorship process? And are there untapped avenues still out there?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that you can do is make yourself available, right? We've ended up in a world lately where every interaction is planned, right? The water cooler conversations, the accidentally bumping into somebody in a hallway and asking them a question, through work from home, through the use of Zoom meetings, through our calendars being absolutely stuffed throughout the course of a day, have really limited what I call accidental mentoring opportunities, whereby which you're sitting at a water cooler and somebody else walks in and asks, hey, have you ever solved this problem before? What did you learn when you were trying to solve this problem? You have to be able to make yourself available, even if that means for 2 hours a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, blocking off 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on your calendar, providing a Zoom link to everyone in your organization that says, hey, treat this as though it's my office, my door is open, come in, ask questions, leave, be here, pay attention to everybody's questions. It doesn't matter. This is just an open forum, right? And if nobody shows up, keep doing your work. But one of the things that's really going to surprise a lot of leaders is how many people will show up for that, because we are all craving personal connections these days. And we might as well turn that craving for personal connections into meaningful mentorship opportunities by simply making ourselves available to those that are craving it.
Yeah, to add on to that as well, when we're trying to figure out ways for leaders and people in businesses to figure out how to mentor, to create opportunities for mentorship, don't let your title define what you can think you can do as a mentor. So everything we're talking about here isn't just for the C-suites. It's not just for the director of in community engagement or HR or something like that. Like, your title has nothing to do with you and your role as a mentor. You can be an assembly worker, you can be a frontline worker, you can be whoever in a business, and you have the possibility and the opportunity to mentor someone in that organization. And I think that's a big thing, as well as helping your team understand that. Because when you have the person that's been just a quote unquote, just a engineer for the past 30 years, that's awesome. But when they feel like that, they may not feel like they have what it takes to take on a mentorship role or the opportunity to be someone's mentee. So breaking down that barrier of titles equal mentorship, which I feel like a lot of people in businesses can feel sometimes, I think that's a big thing as well.
So mentoring can come from a wide variety of positions and people, not necessarily the person with the title.
I've definitely learned my most in my career from people that have been engineering title 30 plus years, finance 30 plus years, accounting 30 plus years, sales 30 plus years, seemingly a lot more so than any, VP title or C-suite title. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us, Chris and Jacob. I don't know if I was craving this connection like you said, Chris, but it was a great conversation and great insight. It's always a pleasure to catch up, as well as and to stay on topic. A good learning experience. So, Chris, if listeners want to learn more about Caddy, where should they go?
Two very important places, online at us.caddy.com. And more importantly, if people are listening and going to be attending FabTech, we're going to be in booth S32-141. So really hoping that people stop by and are craving that personal connection, and we get to have a chat.
And Jacob, how about IGUS?
Yeah, IGUS.com is the one that's well known. RBTX is one that may not be as well known, though. That's an awesome one where we're actually collecting industry solutions for people to just scroll through and learn about. Shows that we have for the rest of 2024. That's all going to be FabTech, Pack Expo, Assembly Show, And I'm hoping that that is it.
All right. Well, I look forward to reconnecting at FabTech in Orlando, and to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more podcasts, visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org.